Okay, before we get started, I'm going to do our staff opening remarks. Okay, so welcome to the January 2024 Design Review Committee meeting. I'm going to call the roll to confirm that our DRC members are present. Omari Davis.
Here.
Robert Dudka is excused. Alex Foster. Here. And Andrew Wenchel.
Here.
Right. DRC meetings are held in person and streamed simultaneously to allow commissioners, applicants, and the public to attend online. For members of the board and applicants joining us this evening, if board members or applicants lose internet connectivity during today's meeting, please reconnect with us via the dial-in phone option. Applicants, please keep your devices muted and your video turned off until your item is under review. When called upon to speak, you must unmute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon that is located on your meeting command bar. The command bar will appear if you move your cursor down toward the bottom of your screen. We do not have the ability to unmute you. If you are dialing in by phone, press the *6 to unmute. The meeting chat is active for participants who need technical assistance and should not be used for questions. The public may observe the meetings, but participation in the discussion is limited to applicants and members of the HALRB during this meeting. Public comment is welcome at the HALRB meeting. Information about signing up as a speaker or submitting a public comment for that meeting is available on the HALRB website. Lastly, this is a public forum. Today's meeting will be recorded and posted to the county website. All information associated with today's meeting, whether written or spoken, is subject to the Freedom of Information Act requirements. Right. So, start us off, we're going to go to the first agenda item, but let me share my screen. That didn't work. Go this way for right now. Okay, so our first agenda item is for the house in Maywood at 2911 23rd Street North. This house came forward last year for their patio project, so you might remember it. It was pretty recent that they came forward. And they're coming back because they had to make a few adjustments. So the 3 adjustments are that they're enlarging the patio walls so that they can accommodate a stone facade on them. They've also determined that the existing patio steps can't be saved, so they have to replace them. And then the original, the patio basically is getting increased in size. So originally it was to be 624 square feet, and now it's going to measure 650 square feet. Alex, I believe I saw that you were online. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
Hi, thank you. Yes, we're not really enlarging the actual patio. It's really just the walls are widening, so it's taking up more space. And now the stairs are included in that area of that additional 26 square feet. So it's essentially the same size patio. It's just the walls are a little chunkier than they were on the original plan.
Thank you. Great.
Yeah, so if anybody has any questions, I mean, this is generally the same. It's almost identical. The exterior elevations are all the same as what we submitted previously.
What was existing? Does anyone have any questions? So this is what you all saw previously. This is what was previously approved.
It's really not enlarging, it's just the walls are.
Yeah, the walls are getting bigger to accommodate this facade, and then the stairs are are being replaced, and so like this is the stair area over here,
Yeah, the stairs are on the patio,
right here.
below where you're pointing.
Okay.
They're down down to the on the right towards at the patio level. They're on the patio.
Okay, got it.
In the corner next to they actually go to the side. I don't know if you can see them in in any of the existing pictures, but they're there. They're concrete, and what's going to happen is they're not going to be to code if we leave them the way they are. And we thought they were originally going to stay, but it's not going to be realistic to keep them in their current state because the height is going to change slightly.
Okay. Right. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
I don't have any questions. It's pretty straightforward. I think all makes that's yeah, because it increase in size this the walls and not necessarily a big change in operations per se.
Out of curiosity, it wasn't a stone wall beforehand. I wasn't on a TRC beforehand. Was it a different material?
So
The earlier iteration? I have no issues with that. I'm just curious.
No, it was sort of an undecided and was never like finalized. It's still a little undecided and not totally finalized, but this is what the plan that was submitted with the building permit has like gone through the building permit process, and it has the stone facade. I mean, we originally showed it with the stone facade, I believe, but I think that they may do parging to match the house, and if we need to make that change later, we will. It's kind of a fluctuating. They just haven't exactly made up their mind.
Just curious, the materials on that stone are that.
Yeah.
Sounds great to me.
Yeah, because this is what you see right here is pretty much what you guys saw previously. It's just that the changing and the yeah.
It was just it was like at a sketch level previously, and so this was once we finally realized what was being finalized, they made sure that the walls were the appropriate width to support the stone. And so it just needed to increase, like, I think it was like 6 inches on either side.
So consent agenda? Okay. Okay, Alex, so the item's been placed on the consent agenda. I'll follow up with you after after this meeting tonight and send you some more details. But essentially that means that at the beginning of the HALRB meeting, every item on the consent agenda is voted and blocked together. But I'll send you some more details about that.
Okay, that sounds great. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks.
Okay. Our next item is here. So this is for another house in Maywood. This is at 2900 22nd Street North. This is a new build. So this house was constructed in 2009. I believe it was an empty lot when the Maywood neighborhood was put on the National Register of Historic Places, and then someone purchased the lot and built this house. So essentially what they're coming forward with today is a couple different things, but the main components are that they are going to demolish the existing rear deck and stairs, and then they're going to construct a new deck with new stairs and also put in a new screened-in porch. So Bob, I believe you're online with us. If you would like to kind of walk us through the project, you're welcome to, or I can provide more detail.
Sure, no problem. You've summarized it. You've summarized it very well. We are taking down what is their existing deck. I don't suppose you can see my cursor. Is that correct?
No, but
Okay.
if you want me to point out something specifically, I'm happy to do so.
Oh, no, that's okay. I was just I'm used to pointing with the cursor.
Yeah,
So we're
yeah,
taking,
no problem.
yeah, you can see on the left left is the demo and on the right is proposed. So we're taking down their existing deck there on the left, and what we are proposing is a new screen porch and deck. What you see on the right are actually just the footings. It's the next page that shows the screen porch and deck. There we go. So yeah, you can see the removal of the deck. And it should be noted that one of the other things we're doing, the rear of the existing house is that octagon turret that is segmented, and we're just going to straighten the corners on that. That has a relationship to how we were going to be able to fit the doors out to their porch. So it really is a screen porch, an open deck with stairs, and filling in the corners of the octagon.
So this
The-
not a historic home, but it's within the Maywood district. What are the applicable criteria for evaluating? Is it Maywood or is it?
So-
Okay.
The design guidelines still are still followed for new houses. So if you think back to some recent projects, there was a new build on Jackson Street that had to follow the Maywood design guidelines. There was a house that unfortunately caught on fire a couple years ago, and they rebuilt that recently. So if you all might remember that one too, that's the HALRB residence. They also have to meet the Maywood design guidelines. We still use those to inform the design of this. There are just some differences between some of the things that a newer build could utilize as opposed to a historic home. And I see, Cynthia, that your hand is raised if you would like to add to that.
Thanks, Michael. Hi, everybody. I just wanted to add in, for those who are less familiar with the Maywood Design Guidelines, there is a whole chapter on new construction. So even though this is a modern house in the local district, it still has to abide by the rules and the guidance that are in the guidelines.
So if I could, there are 3 other things I wanted to mention about this project. You can tell from this plan that there's interior renovation, which I know does not fall under your purview, but you will see that there are a couple of window changes where we propose to insert new windows, that triple down there, the second elevation there. We propose to insert new windows that pretty much replicate what is existing. They're not going to be any different or unusual. So that's windows. The second thing is where we have to patch and repair things like siding. We're just going to use what is already existing. And we are going to replace their roof with an architectural grade asphalt shingle. And then the last thing is their front porch. The deck boards on the front porch have rotted. They've asked us to replace those. They're not changing the size or configuration or anything about it, simply replacing the deck boards.
And then, correct me if I'm wrong, but they're changing the deck boards from wood to composite material, correct?
That is true.
Okay.
The same is true on the back. We are proposing composite as the for the screen porch and deck in the back, as well as aluminum railings as opposed to wood. You know, one of the major pitfalls of this house is that everything that was originally built as wood is rotting. And that's a big problem for the homeowners.
Okay, so all the composite railings have now been changed to aluminum. They were originally going to be composite, right? The railings on the stairs and the deck.
No, hold on. I might have said that. No, I'm saying what is originally on the house was wood railings.
Okay. But what you're proposing on the back side, what is the material of the railings that you're using on the back side with the new deck?
I'll tell you what, to be honest, we should check the application because I might be saying this wrong. It was
I think I think it was composite based off of what I looked at, but I wanted
Right.
to, I wanted to confirm. I will say that according to the guidelines, composite is one of those materials that can be used sometimes, but not all the time. And often new builds have actually used wood as the railing material. So I looked back at some of the newer builds in Maywood recently, and almost all those projects utilized wood as material for the railings. But some of them did use different materials. Like one of them used synthetic wood steps. We've also got like composite material for porch flooring and PVC lattice work and things like that. So there is
Right.
precedent for its use in the neighborhood, but in terms of railings and kind of something that you're going to probably touch and handle a little bit more than some of these other materials, I think that there's more precedent set for using wood as opposed to composite. And I wanted to put that out there and see if anybody on the DRC had thoughts about that or wanted to discuss it further.
So, I think, first of all, this is on the rear elevation of the house. And I think we've been primarily concerned with the appearance of the front of the sun. So I sympathize in some respects. It's not what it used to be. Pressure treated material is not as good either. I think it's a shame that this deteriorated so rapidly.
I'm sorry, I can't hear everything you're saying.
I'm saying, I think this is on the rear elevation. We've been primarily concerned with trying to be adhere to the guidelines for the front elevation, which is what most people see.
Mhm.
But we're joining neighbors to this to be visually compatible, but it's not a major issue. The general public is not going to see rear elevation of this house. So I'm going to say that I don't have a problem with this.
What material will the new windows be? Will they be wood or
Wood windows.
With the exception of the bathroom window, right? That one's a vinyl window.
It should be noted, that's right. What we were proposing to do, you can see the little square one is actually in a shower. And we would like to propose that being vinyl simply because it's in a shower. It's difficult to keep a wood window alive in a shower.
And that's a brand new opening, right?
There's a new opening. You can see that it's going to replicate the Craftsman style of the window. And if, obviously if that is a bridge too far, we can do something with the wood, but that was in a shower, therefore we wanted that to be a vinyl window.
what material will the new siding be? It'll match, I guess, what's there now.
What's there is hardy. We're going to use hardy plank.
That technically isn't even part of this application because they're replacing in kind with hardy, which is already there, and it meets the specifications, guidelines. And then the front decking is going to be composite material as well, but that one is precedent setting in some ways because, well, not the use of composite, but the wood has rotted, and so that's why they want to use composite. where you talked about
And
that.
this railing would also be composite or wood?
This would be composite based off what
This
we've
would-
been discussing. Yeah,
the
or
rear-
actually, sorry, that's demolition.
I think that's a little more pressure.
The rear decking is the Trex Transcend railing system on the rear is what we were proposing.
And on the front?
On the front,
On the
its
front.
existing remains.
Existing.
The railing stays the same. We're just replacing the decking on the front porch.
Just
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
The composite decking doesn't bother me. It seems appropriate considering the maintenance. I agree with what you were saying, Michael, with the railing, especially if we're not changing the railing, it remains wood. There is something tactile about it, makes it seem kind of contextually appropriate. But if it's on the back, to your point, Andy, it's not a visual issue.
Bar and the architectural asphalt shingle that's matching what's there now, or that'd be a new material for the roof?
that would be a change, correct? But can I ask a clarifying question on that, Bob? So
Yeah,
you're just replacing? I got a little confused by with some of our emails. So the roofing, you are replacing the roof on the entire house, not just the new
Yeah.
screened-in porch, correct?
We are now. That was a change. When I was emailing with you, we were going to replace it on the back half
Okay.
where work was, but then when we were discussing with the homeowner, the fact that they were going to have it's nearing the end of its useful life anyway. They were going to have to replace it. So we said, well, let's just replace the whole thing. And an architectural grade is sort of an upgrade from what they have. They have the 3-tab kind of shingle.
And that actually can be approved via the administrative process. So I'll talk to you about that afterwards, because we can just put that in a separate application and I'll just approve that as staff.
Okay.
And take a look at that in the future. Anything else on this one?
I know in the past, we've had discussions about, I guess, like where the rail sits, either outside or inside the screening. And it appears here that it is sitting, that the main sort of horizontal rail is sitting outside the screen. I want to verify is that correct?
I think it's inside the screen. Is that correct?
This one is inside the screen, correct?
Which if I'm remembering correctly, is the preferred.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So on this kind of what we've been referring to.
I remember that being a discussion.
Yeah.
It helps with people who have dogs, so the dog doesn't go
Yeah.
through the screen.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. So, okay, so it's that'll work too. That'll work too.
Yeah.
Well, given our discussion, which agenda would you all like to place this on?
I guess there's a lot going on here, but at the same time, there's not a ton of concerns, and somebody can always pull it off. I mean, I'm willing to. I can kind of go either way, but I want to move towards that. That works too.
And-
I think consent makes sense. There doesn't seem to be any concerns, especially.
You know, the advantage of not putting it in consent agenda is to raise the issue, say, the RC thinks use of synthetic materials.
Right.
Board has any objections,
Yeah.
or
That.
recommendations forward, but,
Right.
you know, but this is,
Little.
and I think board recognize wood deterioration.
Right.
And they have to make some differences. And I think that's Well, I think you can make the argument much stronger to not change the wood for the front facade.
On
On
the,
the rear.
on the rear, yeah.
It's really not something that you.
Just gonna see, yeah. And also, I think the decking too makes sense on the front porch too, because you're not really looking down at the decking too, so. I think it makes sense, but I kind of take it to your point too, Andy. I think that almost more for sort of precedent, so to speak, that I think I'd like to see it go. And also, I think too, I'm not sure what necessarily what the window guidance is about having the vinyl window inside the shower. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, I'm behind. It's just I'm not sure what our says guidelines too on. I mean, I think if it doesn't give sort of a caveat for, maybe it should be caveat be in there.
We made exceptions in the past for safety or maintenance, ongoing concerns.
So one of the more recent COAs that came forward was a replacement of a wood window that was in a bathroom. I don't know if it was in a shower, but it was in a bathroom. This wood was deteriorating, so we allowed a vinyl window, and it's also on the front side of the house. And that was deemed permissible, but I don't know if that was deemed necessarily permissible by you all, because there was, you know, they had shown that a wood window didn't work there. In this instance, the window would be brand new. And a little bit of a different circumstance, but there are other examples of it in Maywood. So
I think probably discussion.
okay.
Yeah. I mean, with the caveat that we don't object to it. But
Right.
we kind of, like,
The
that's to kind of
discussion of
air
it.
out the, right, yeah.
Okay. All right.
So if I could ask then a point of procedure, we are very, very seriously motivated to get this through on our first review because of the schedule we have with the clients. And when this goes to the full board, do you suppose, what I'm really getting at is between the vinyl window and the front decking, if the full board objects to it, we're happy to change it because we just really need to get through on our first try. We don't have another month to give to resubmit. So is there, I sort of have two questions. One is, do you have a recommendation of whether we should change that now? Or secondarily, should we go before the whole board, and if they have a problem, do we change it then and it doesn't have to go through another review, or does it have to go through another review?
If bringing this to the entire board serves the purpose of examining a precedent of material, it doesn't go against any of the precedents that we've addressed in the past. Is there a way to just make a note of it beyond the consent agenda? Put this on the consent agenda and make a note for the entire board that says, reviewed this, it's similarly to other cases, we've approved the vinyl window side because of circumstances. They have had water damage in the past, so we've approved the alternative material. It doesn't seem out of character with what we've approved.
I think, and Cynthia, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the place that we could make a note about that is in the staff report, in the DRC recommendation section of the staff report.
That's correct.
And then should somebody on the full board decide that they want to pull it, that option is still there. You know, there are still, there's still the option for them to pull it and have a larger discussion if people are questioning some of this. But to get to your question, Bob, you know, you could absolutely make these changes now, but the DRC doesn't feel, correct me if I'm wrong, that it's necessary to make those changes, that the current application is fine just as it is. It's more of a good opportunity for the HALRB to have a larger discussion about materiality in the neighborhood. That being said, if the conversation with the HALRB goes in such a direction that more board members feel that it should be wood, or it should be, you know, a wood window in the shower instead of vinyl, you absolutely have the opportunity to make that change. And what can happen is the board can make a motion that basically outlines, per these changes that we've discussed in this meeting, we approve this COA, which wouldn't necessitate you having to come back to the HALRB again.
Wonderful.
That does happen. So that
Okay.
would be another option.
Okay, that's
But
good.
I think from where we sit right now, you should just bring your application forward as it is and not make any of those changes, because there haven't been any issues that we've seen thus far.
Okay.
But I do want to circle back. Is it still on the discussion agenda or the consent agenda?
I'd still say from discussion. I mean,
Okay.
I'm confident that sort of the merits of the sort of case will sort of win out. I mean, and
Yeah.
I know it's not as smooth for the applicant, but I think it'll just be better for the board. That's my take. Yeah. But
All right. So what's going to happen is the item, your application has been put on the discussion agenda. So I, as staff, will give a basically our report to the board, and then you'll have an opportunity to share your thoughts and answer any questions, and then it will be before the board for discussion. But I'll follow up with you with a summary of tonight's meeting and some more information about that moving forward. But do you have any questions for us at this time?
No, I do not. Michael, thank you very much. Katie, do you have anything?
No, thank you. Appreciate it.
Great, wonderful. Thank you both so much for being here, and I hope you feel better, Bob.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Any day now.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. So our third agenda item is, Chris, if you would like to move to the table, if you would like to join us. This is I'm going to zoom in here, pretty tiny. This is for the Celtic House. One second. This project is coming before us. You might remember this project from last year. This is part of the Columbia Pike Form-Based Code, which is why it's coming to us for review. It's at 2500 Columbia Pike. Last year, they came forward to have a vestibule added on. So this section right here, I'm gonna they had this vestibule approved and reviewed by the HALRB to be added onto the backside. So this is the backside of the building, but it's a restaurant and bar called the Celtic House. And so the front of it is on Columbia Pike, which is over here. But they're coming forward this evening with a signage proposal that is going to be placed here. So let me actually this page. So this is what is being proposed. So I know from staff's perspective, so Lauren is typically our planner who reviews form-based code related projects, and she couldn't be here this evening because she's on vacation, but she shared some of her thoughts with me initially. And so I'll share those, but I want to hear what everyone else thinks too. So Lauren's initial thought was that it should be reduced in size because the signage that's being proposed here is a little bit bigger than some of the other signage on the backside of the building for the other like shops and businesses on the backside. So she felt like it could be about 1/3 smaller. And then she also recommended that it be placed above the brick banding as opposed to underneath it. And I think that was also to have it match with neighboring signs. And I'm actually going to look up a street view of that real quick just to see if I can find it. But are there any initial thoughts or reactions from the DRC? And this is our applicant
Can
here,
you-
Chris.
Can you give the whole elevation of the?
Yeah, you want this image here?
So it's actually fitting underneath And
Yeah, so when we said for the placement of the sign, when we put it above the band, we look at the full rear of the building as a whole. So our sign would actually be a lot higher than the rest. So we tried to bring it down to the same level. So every building is underneath the band, but they're all different in sizes because of the back is almost like a bumpy road. There's a lot of steps up and down to the rear of the building because of the elevation. So that was the best place for us to put it. Because of the previous tenants, there's also a really big hole in that wall right there where the electricals came out from the previous tenant. So we're hoping to reuse that hole again to run our electrical into it rather than have to go up and drill through more brick again. The brick that's on the building is very tumultuous. It falls apart very easily. We've experienced that during construction at the minute of the new place. So we don't want to cause any more exterior damage to the building by having to raise the sign higher, run electrical through a different hole or a different outlet of the building.
what is the back? There's a parking area here?
Yeah, so you always have the buildings right here. There's a grass area, probably 10 square feet maybe. Just grass area the whole way down, and then there's the private parking lot, which belongs to our landlord. There's around 50 spaces in it.
I'm actually going to share. Oh, Cynthia, do you have your hand up currently, or is that a holdover?
I thought I put it down.
Okay,
I'll double
I
check.
I think you did. It just didn't register in our teams. I'm just
Sorry.
going to, no, it's okay. I'm gonna look this up so that we
Yeah.
can all look at the back of the building. Okay. So this is where that vestibule is being constructed currently, and then, okay, so this is where it's being proposed. but then
Michael,
this-
can you share your screen?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you.
It's okay. Perfect. Okay, got it.
Okay, so the vestibule for, I'll repeat, since I wasn't sharing my screen. The vestibule is gonna be over here, and it's already been pretty much constructed at
The
this
vestibule was constructed, yeah.
Yep, okay. And the sign would be, here is where it's being proposed, and that these are the signs on the backside, which I think is what Lauren was referencing when she first looked at
Yeah.
this project. But I can see what you mean, that there's,
Different levels of elevation, so it's you can't get a straight line essentially.
The other signs are also, they usually want to look lower, but is there a vent underneath of them?
I
Or-
think this one does, yeah, there's
Right.
like a vent there, so they couldn't
True.
put it there. This one's on top of
Right.
a railing. And this one is above the banding.
It's much lower too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
their elevation is lower on that end than what we are. We're kind of higher up, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
In terms of placement, when I looked at the initial elevation, it didn't look out of place. It seemed contextually, even with this elevation, very appropriate underneath that banding around top of the window. It almost looks like a sign wants to be there.
Yeah.
So that doesn't bother me, but out of curiosity, is this the same establishment as the one on the front? Is
Yeah,
it
so
different wording?
the windows at the top here is actually our current restaurant. So that's our main restaurant, takes up the whole length of the building
Right.
essentially. So we've actually constructed a staircase inside the building which connects both together. So we want the sign to be that specific size as well, so that actually draws attention that it's there. Because both restaurants will be connected together with the staircase. We didn't want the sign being too small in case it's missed on us. It's more for our own marketing. People know where we are, if that makes sense.
Okay, no, that makes sense. So this is just the whiskey bar side of it, and the
Yeah.
other side is more the restaurant.
Yeah, once we get through this permit, our landlord wants to change all signs because we're doing a whole fresh new project. Everything looks great and fantastic. So she's willing to pay for everybody else to get a new sign erected essentially. But that's her problem and she can do it for those permits. But the plan is to bring it to the standard that we've had it at for the last 10 years, especially the front side as well, because our sign is more prominent and it looks like it should actually be there, if that makes sense, on the other side as well. So we try to keep it as consistent with our current sign on the main restaurant at the front of the Columbia Pike. The color, the only thing is different is the coloring, that's it.
And the font, I think that's what.
font's
got
different as
me
well, yeah.
initially. I like the placement, but the font does seem a little bit different. The kerning's a little bit.
Yeah,
Uh,
so the font is our whole logo, it's our whole theme throughout.
okay.
It's on
Part of the
everything.
new branding.
Yeah, it's the whole new branding and marketing side of it.
It's actually think it's. Having seen the whole bunch of them, at first I thought the sign was kind of crowded.
Yeah.
There, but looking at the building complex.
Yeah.
Oh, I think. I like the fonts and the change. Size. Character. I don't have.
The sign runs from like window edge to window edge. So that's the idea for this that's on here.
Yeah, and it's partially as well because, so the vestible's erected right now. The roof of the vestibule will block it from, if you're coming down South Barton Street, you won't actually be able to see the sign
Oh, sure.
because of the construction of the vestibule that we got approved. So that's why it's that size also, so you can actually see it from South Barton Street or from
Right.
the big.
Okay,
The smaller the vestibule will block that whole view completely.
that's sure.
Yeah, from that side of South Barton Street.
Yeah.
Like,
This is nitpicky and not a basis for approval or not approval, but the line in the middle, is that a border or is that supposed to be a character?
it's just like, it's part of the font, so it's just a line, so it's not actually, if that makes sense.
Doesn't read that way to me.
Okay, are we able to scroll down to the,
To this
Yeah.
right here.
Right.
So are you wanting it to be like, to have like a space here, Alex, and
I
a
think
space
if it
here?
did, it would create a little bit of hierarchy, not a basis of approval.
Yeah.
just Personal opinion.
yeah, it's just, it's obviously, like I said, both restaurants will be connected. This is more of a higher end. It is basically a whiskey, where that's higher end, so we want that to be specifically known that you're coming to see us for a whiskey. This is where you're kind of going. It's the separation. Upstairs is still the pub and restaurant.
So the Celtic House, that's the same style as the sign in the front.
The sign at the front is more of a Celtic font. It's a little bit older. It was also done 10 years ago before technology advanced. So it looks a little bit older, a little bit more rustic. I'm sure you can probably see it on Street View. The color green is also a little bit deeper, and the font itself is more of a yellow color on the front.
Okay.
But I'm sure over time, if we've got any money left, we could probably replace that.
But you're trying to make the connection. with the
Yeah, yeah.
sign.
The connection to us is the staircase inside. It's not about the signs on the exterior. The staircase is what we put into the middle of the restaurant will connect both together from a customer perspective.
I still don't have a problem. Yeah. I think it's.
Agenda. So I know you were here for the spiel earlier, but it's gonna go on the consent agenda, so it will still come forward to the full HALRB. But basically, the consent agenda gets voted in block at the very beginning of the meeting.
Yeah,
And so any items that are on there, they get voted on all together.
okay.
I'll follow up with an email, with more information for you, but you can attend virtually or in person.
Okay.
if you like.
I just have one other question. So see on the side of our building as a whole, so there's a big sign that has all businesses that
Oh.
that are listed on the lower level. I was just to insert this sign into the existing spot. I have to get a permit for that. The signboard is already on the building. So I just need to slide one of these in essentially, say that we're on the lower level.
So I think from our perspective, Cynthia, correct me if I'm wrong, please, but I think from ours, I would see that as a replacement in kind because
Yeah.
you're just taking a sign that's already there and putting in a new sign. It's not that you're constructing a new sign.
Yeah.
Does that make sense, Cynthia, or? She might have stepped away. I can follow up with you
Yeah,
via email on that one, but in terms of like permitting elsewhere.
Yeah.
I'm not sure because we only deal with the like historic element of it.
So my only worry with that was that when we originally started this sign process, we were replacing a sign that was already there in kind as well, and then we had to come to this.
Okay,
So I don't want to,
sure.
to be honest, what we found when we started this project, a lot of work has been done. This building was never approved or permitted on. So every time we try to do anything, we're going through the whole process of bringing this whole block to code essentially. So we're about $1 million deep right now in a project that should have cost $200,000, and we can't afford to keep going through this cycle, you know. So it's frustrating on us. I know it's you guys have to do the job and stuff, but it's taking us toll financially on us. It's severe, so yeah, I just don't want to have to go, if I need to get a permit for it, I'd rather get it in right now and get it in front of the next committee, and then we'll get it put in, if that makes sense.
Okay, I'll look into that specifically.
Yeah,
for you-
that'd be
for you
great.
and let you know, if that would be considered an in-kind replacement or if it would be considered new
Yeah.
signage. And I'll talk to Lauren about it too, because my familiarity with Corby's is not as robust. as
Yeah.
hers.
Yeah, and the one that we want to put on the side, the space is there, the old business was taken out, so it's laying empty as it is, so it looks a little bit rough. We just, that you want to just slide that piece in, it's a lot smaller as well, so it's not the full size of this.
The only thing that I will know, because I know you noted this earlier about the brick being really ugly, is that when you put in this new sign, it sounds like you're trying to limit any new holes in the brick, but I would just make note for your installer to really try to use the quarter joints as
Yeah.
opposed to the brick itself for any new holes that need to.
Yeah, so we've only experienced that so far on the interior of the brick, we've not touched anything on the outside of the building so far. We're wary of filling any holes and
Yeah.
causing any more damage. Our staircase, we had to put them in different special welds and bring in 3 different fabricator companies, so we would damage the brickwork or the building would collapse. I don't know what would happen with it, to be honest, so we want to be extremely cautious that we don't cause any damage or cost ourselves any more money. That's kind of where we're at with it, so.
Well, I'll follow up with you and share some more information about that and then your other.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks, Michael.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year.
Have a good one.
Okay. Moving right along, our fourth agenda item is with the Arlington Historical Society. This is an amendment project. So Jessica Kaplan, I believe, should be online this evening to join us, but you all may remember that a couple months ago, the HALRB looked at and reviewed a project for the Ball Sellers House that related to 3 plaques or stumbling stones that were put in place to honor the lives of the enslaved people who lived at the Ball Sellers House. And those plaques have been installed, but they have been installed with a couple differences. All of them are relatively minor, but it did need to come back to the board. So this is where they were installed. This is where you all approved that they could be installed in the past, and this is what they look like today. So the big changes are the backside has this new a stamp on it. So you can actually go to.
Could you do that up for something?
Oh, sure. This is what you wanted to see, Cindy?
Sketch.
So there's a new stamp on the back side that has a building and then some text underneath it. And then the other change that they've made is, you all may remember, I'm going to skip ahead just for a second, Andy, I can go back to it. So this sign right here, it's a Sankofa. They didn't end up using it, and so that's not seen on the front of the on like the plaque that's on the very front. So those are the changes. Jessica, are you online?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, great. Do you have anything that you would like to add to what we've talked about thus far?
Yeah, only that the stamp on the back, yeah, it just didn't even occur to me that to have it on there. I'm so sorry, it just didn't. And we worked with Arlington Tech, their carpentry class, who made the cement plinths, and it was their decision. All we wanted was Arlington Historical Society and Black Heritage Museum, but they put the Hume School picture on there and Arlington Tech without my knowledge. So that just was. And after we had decided to use the Sankofa, I talked with the project coordinators, and we just decided that it might be a little bit divisive if we had an African symbol like the Sankofa on it, since it referred to a specific area of Africa and, might exclude other portions of Africa. And we just decided it was maybe a little bit too fraught and we would just leave it with the text about the enslaved people. So that was the decision process.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. Does anyone have any questions or comments about what you're seeing?
You really can't see the stamp, by the way, from the front of the house. You'd have to go around and take a really deep look at the back.
Madison? Great. Consent agenda? Great. Okay, Jessica, so it's been placed on the consent agenda. So I'll
Okay.
send an email to you likely tomorrow or Friday with some more information. But that item will be voted in block with all the other consent agenda items at the beginning of the meeting, but I'll make sure to follow up with you with more information.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for attending.
All right, goodbye.
Bye. Okay. Our fifth agenda item is for Walker Chapel. And we have it right here. Yeah. I know that Mr. Danforth is online. He is unfortunately not feeling well, but he wanted to join us virtually and couldn't make it here in person. So you all might remember this project release. Andy and Alex will remember from the last DRC meeting that there was some discussion about the site electrical equipment and how to screen that essentially. So I'm happy to let you explain some of the different options that you've come up with, that you've explored, because there have been a couple roadblocks from different entities as to what you could actually do to screen the electrical equipment. So
sure, and actually, Larry, excuse me, Larry, are you online and connected?
I am.
Okay, would you care to say anything to start with, and then I'll take it from there.
Okay. First, we'll apologize for the confusion as we have worked our way through multiple solutions, and hopefully we've come down to something that's really straightforward. We either leave it alone and just live with what's there. We put the boxes on the wall, or we take the whole thing and move it across the street into the woods or next to the wooded area. And so James and I are open to your comments and review. We, of course, have our favorite, but we'd love to hear what you have to say.
So if I could pick it up from there, because I would like to, if I may, before just going into discussion. This morning I worked on something new I'm going to hand out, and actually I could forward this to you.
sure.
See how quickly it gets to you. It's not a very big file. But I'm going to start with a view that the public never sees. In fact, my bet is that Larry and I are the only two people on Earth that have seen this. I'm just seriously, I know it's a big claim, but standing on top of the VDOT right away that separates, it's a big berm. It's a result of cut from decades ago when they realigned Glebe Road and created Old Glebe Road, and Glebe Road, that was Little Falls Road. And they left, VDOT then left this unusable, undevelopable piece of land there. And in fact, the church about 20 years ago, we approached VDOT about trying to give it to us, sell it to us, anything, because VDOT does not maintain it. And so it's just this rat nest almost of trees and stuff up there. So I'm going through all this to say that the public doesn't see this particular part of the site that we're talking about at all. The only, and even the church users or people cutting through the church property can only see it when they're right upon it. So what I'm doing is kind of putting it in context. Our project's very large. We have like 400 feet of this $1 million plus retaining wall that we built, and it's got features to it and so forth. So this is a relatively small piece of the entire project. I want to follow that up with appreciate it.
I'm trying to, I got it now.
Got it? Okay.
So if everyone online just bears with me a second, you'll soon get to see what we're looking at in person.
You read my mind. Thank you, Michael.
You're welcome. Okay, Cynthia, can you see this new? I'm pretty sure you can, but I just want.
Yeah, it's like,
Okay.
it looks like tiles of photos. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So the center tile is with the black frame. That's what replaced. That's what was there before. And same amount of amps coming to the site. We just got more equipment because that was back in the day when you could do residential, but of course the county and Dominion Energy considers us commercial. So this is all now commercial grade equipment that we have to install. It's all new equipment, but that was it. That was our baseline. And what we feel is that combination of size of this necessary site infrastructure relative to the scale of the project is extremely nominal. And it's experiencing it is very limited. The public never sees it. Only someone on church property. And part of the point of these smaller tiles, smaller images, is to just give a sense of the approach where even if you're walking the church driveway, you don't see it until you're right upon it. So we want to just be sure that, we do establish, suitable context. This is something, obviously, any building, any large site campus, they need infrastructure. And our approach, and I should, as a footnote, the original C of A, it contained civil engineering drawings and landscape architecture. None of us were aware at the time the two conflicted. You approved both of them. Civil engineering ones did show it freestanding, just like we constructed it. The landscape said it would be wall mounted, but then in their wall elevations, they didn't draw it and show it. So it was very, very small indication on the plans. As explained at previous meeting, we feel that the integrity of the new all stone retaining wall is more important, maintaining that integrity, than creating a freestanding element that unabashedly is there to support the site and it's new, yes, but it's not attached to especially to the wall's curve. It's not flat, so it becomes a little challenging to think how that would be accomplished. So as Larry mentioned, we have sincerely made a good faith effort to conceptualize every possible thing we could think of. We went through a series of options. Last time we were before the DRC, we were all hopeful and optimistic, which about 24 hours later was all up in flames when I finally got through to Dominion Energy. And because of their very strict criteria on their commercial meters, and I should have also mentioned back on this, that's a temporary asphalt patch. That's the undergrounding of Dominion's feed to our site. It's coming from a pole right very close to where I'm standing taking this picture. And this will all be this will all be repaved. We just stopped here. This is all new pavement. We stopped as this was being completed and we'll continue with the whole parking lot. So we're going to unify the asphalt paved surface of the whole church campus, whole property. And that's what we're striving to get to that point right now.
And I wanted to just orient Omari. So this is what they came forward with last month, and it didn't end up coming to the full HALRB, but this is what we largely discussed last month at the DRC, but then Dominion Energy said no, essentially.
They said no to a number of them.
Yeah.
I'd also like to point out, Mr. Winchell, I was intrigued by your triptych. I studied it. I created drawings on it. I submitted that to Dominion, and of course, nothing it can touch. Nothing can be anywhere near. And I submitted a diagram. I said, well, can we go to the backside? Because you mentioned that too. Can we at least mount the meter on the backside? Because a comment was made like it looked like an eyeball when we were trying to look at things to put around it. And they rejected that as well, because they said it's got to be a 36-inch clear continuous path. No dead ends, no going around something to read a meter. So we did run down all of this, hoping that we would get some flexibility, but none was to be had. So Larry mentioned, we have two option fours.
Yes.
The most recent option four.
So let's see, we have a couple different options.
Well, that showed the diagram. This is
Yeah.
what I said to Dominion Energy. Please, could we do this? Give you a sidewalk,
So this was one option here, but is this one of the ones you want to?
Yeah, so
Okay.
this is leaving the installation. Have a freestanding triptych type structure that would screen the view if you're in the driving. It creates a rather odd pedestrian situation because we have to have the free flow for this. So you get this kind of in the middle of the sidewalk type situation as you're approaching it. Neither Larry or myself felt that this would be very natural in why it was there. And it wouldn't offer 100% screening, but it some. And we had even indicated that using Dominion's criteria, where were we to mount it on the wall? By maintaining that 3 foot, you only be left a bench of planting. And in that, at any height, would still leave this thing largely visible. So we could not find a satisfactory way to meet everybody's criteria and screen it. Could not completely screen it at all. Best we could do would be
Oh, this is that version that we were just looking at, the triptych.
right, freestanding
This-
screen,
Right.
floated out, not touching. And yeah, and
So essentially, there are 3 options, correct? So you either want to leave it as is, this is what it looks like.
And I'd like to actually pass around one more thing.
Okay.
That will better represent. See, this is incomplete. This is like 3/4 built. It is not complete. So so everything I've shown you this evening, these are all actual photos, no retouching. This has got some retouching going, because I'm trying to show what the completed installation would look like. And that's my lovely wife as a model. She's not Photoshopped. She was actually standing there a couple of days ago.
Okay, it's not part of this packet. Oh, yes, it is. Okay. All
There
right.
it is.
So
Yeah,
this
there it
video,
is.
and everyone online, what we are looking at in person is this image that's on the screen.
So what I realized is that a lot of what is there blends very well with the wall, except for the Dominion Energy meter box. It's a very light gray. So I'm proposing, and they have no restrictions against us painting their box, to paint their box to match the other panels. And then there's a couple conduit feeds that are also very light gray. So we want to take everything the same, dark gray. This is the northwest side of the site, so it never gets direct sun, so it's always in shadow. So this is a very realistic photograph in that respect. So it's blending, as you can see, it's blending against the wall, and it always will because it's never going to have direct sun on it. And then this is Juga or similar type of ground cover, which I vetted with Arlington's 5-page invasive species do not plant list, and it's okay. It doesn't have to be a Juga, but why not? We have it in our front yard at the street, and I know because I mow over it all the time. It's hardy. It doesn't need watering. And it spreads. So, you know, we want it to do just like this. We want it to fill that. We want it to cover the fountain. We don't want to see the fountain, walk by and see the foundations of this thing. And it'll actually get up. So some of the feeds coming out of the ground. And then the other thing that I retouched is the driveway. Taking out the big old trench, that asphalt trench that's there now, because this is what it will look like when we're done. It'll be paved, all this will be paved. So paint, plant, repave. That's all to be done as part of completing this as-is condition.
This is, we'll call this option
I would love to call it option one because this is, and I confirmed today, we confirmed today with our pastor, this is the church's preference, this option. Yes, sir.
Working on. Gee, that's primarily for church people to work in, or is it for the cemetery?
Well, they're one and the same. So that is all church property. And it has no other use but supporting the church. Maybe we have a preschool program. And of course, when we do have funerals, yeah, there could be loaded up and then street parking as well. But yes,
So a number of people are going to walk from there to the church.
correct. And this is one of the benefits of this. There never used to be a sidewalk. If you recall this photo, it was just the driveway that went right up to the wall. So people had to walk in the driveway. So that was one of our improvements with the new project. There's a sidewalk, there's a handicap access ramp at its beginning and midway, where we pick up handicap parking in the church building itself. The other thing I should point out about this should be free and clear of any other approvals. Dominion Energy should have no problem with this. Arlington zoning should have no problem. Zoning's only flagged this because they noticed it was different from what they saw in the landscape portion of the original CMA.
Well, it seems to me that camouflaging approach painted a dark gray. You're not going to really see this. You might even consider painting it several different shades of dark gray, so it kind of doesn't have a total mass. It might blend a little.
So I see your point. So it's more like the variety.
Right.
Stones.
And if there's no problem with that, I think rather than calling attention to this thing, something to screen it, this might be the best approach. So it's a long way.
I know, we're
long
taking a
way around, but
long road to get here.
What are the other options?
So the only one that I need to come back to mention is this most recent one that was added, this one, this one. Okay, so now we're looking, I was standing up here on this part, thinking up here. So what Larry was referencing in his opening remarks was to push it out here. Get it away from the driveway. It and us. The challenge, this scheme, is that this is not church property. Church property is out here. This, we have been grandfathered on the edge of our park. So that's all been vetted all through our building permit phase and VDOT's cooperation with what we were told, expand. So this would be a challenge on a couple fronts. Obviously, Dominion Energy would have to approve having their equipment in public right of way. And I think probably the bigger challenge Arlington zoning would have to. Having been the one who went into the fray with the zoning reviewer assigned to this project 2 years ago, where I had to prove that although the property line is here, there was a challenge to the height of the wall, proximity to parking property line. And I actually got VDOT's cooperation in proving in indicating that, well, it was once Park Chapel property. And it was condemned, taken over for construction of Glebe Road down the Chain Bridge as part of that project. And that it's not developable and that effectively, a property line was out there. Legally, it's not. When I produced the right-of-way maps from VDOT, because we couldn't find it. And we had a lawyer looking for it, could not find anything that proved we ever owned that land. VDOT had that information. They gave it to us. I submitted it to zoning. But this, to me, goes a step further, and that's why I'm anxious. I'd be very anxious over this with the county. Not to mention the energy, but first stop is the county zoning as to whether they would let us actually cross over with construction, something that wasn't ours.
Well, I think it would stand out more against that background in the wall. I think you'd be calling more attention to it.
I think, and Larry and I, because this has been happening so fast, we haven't had much of a chance to talk directly, mostly email back and forth. For this to be approvable, and we did it, I think we would look for something, if there was room, to do almost like a reverse of the triptych scheme. Instead of being over here, it'd be over here. There you go. But this, to me, has some of the same visual challenges as to what is that freestanding thing doing? Whether it's in the middle of the sidewalk or the middle of the driveway.
It has to have that clearance from it because of Dominion.
36 inches.
Access, right?
This location is non-starter. So what's the third option?
The third option, I think, was to put it in the wall, right? That was.
Correct. And what's it, What is, besides the challenge of mounting square stuff in the wall that we really would like to be able to have? This. So these are panels in plan. Here I've elevated them. And what I'm showing here is that in the area we have available to plant, we can't get some partial screening. But we'd be doing a lot. We'd be doing a lot to the wall to get partial. Not to mention $5,000 to $8,000 it would cost to move. And I know money's not supposed to be a consideration, but we are a church. It's all, these are all donations. And so, and our pastor feels quite strongly about it. So we feel obligated to be very sensitive to cost.
Aspect of congregation. But I don't know about you, but the view that you're presenting with it painted is not a massive visual obstruction. It doesn't seem out of context. I really appreciate the iterations and just kind of the study on how to screen really unsightly things. We've got one in front of our office and it pains me every time I walk in, but at the same time, it doesn't pain me that much. But I do appreciate the dedication to looking at different screening options. To me, the first option, especially if it's what you're already considering, and you've done the research with the planting, it seems like a reasonable option.
I would agree. I would second everything Alex said.
Very quick, I think though, you could raise this question with the board.
This particular,
Yes, so shouldn't the resolution, at least pictures be available and call attention to it? I don't really want to say that. I don't have any problem saying this. Impact, visual impact. The solution right there, and paint it to make it go away. And I think that sugar or whatever, some ground cover that's perhaps colorful, this draws your eye and not the power equipment. But I wonder if the board should pictures up there to show them what was considered if they would look, just mention that as could be on consent. It's really, they can always ask. Hold off and talk about it.
My only concern with that, and Cynthia, I see your hand is up. My only concern with if we put it on consent and what application we're putting on the website, if there's multiple options, the other HALRB members might be confused which option was the one that you all selected ultimately. So I, from staff's perspective, would favor just having one option, option one in this instance, so this one right here, as the one presented, but I can appreciate wanting to get to showcase the level of effort that went into the application to the rest of the HALRB. Cynthia, you have your hand up, and so I want to make sure to call on you.
Thank you. I just wanted to do a quick time check. We do have one more item after this. So in terms of process, I agree with, I think, the direction you're leaning, Michael, of suggesting that the DRC come up with their preferred option as well. And it looks, based on the conversation that's been going on, that the picture on the screen seems to be everyone's top choice. So that would be my advice, is to use this as what we present to the full HALRB, but then within the staff report and both our written staff report and the verbal one, we could explain, that there was a thoughtful process that led to this point. And Michael, I feel like too, maybe just in our slides, we have a few of the other images as backups in case conversation happens, that we would have those at the ready. I don't mean to belittle all the effort that everyone has taken to get to this point, but I must admit, looking at everything in a preparation for tonight, there was a lot of information. It was very confusing. So I think the more succinct we can make it and more straightforward for what goes forward to the full board, the easier it's going to be for them to make their determination.
Just full board need to make a determination. I think it's definitely an interesting item to bring forward as a for information only, but are there actually any concerns about this other than just wanting to share a really wonderful process?
Yeah,
May I add a comment?
Sure.
Zoning is currently looking at the plan that moves the meters across the street. So we do not know at this point whether that will be acceptable to them or not. And the plan would be to go back to Merrifield and landscape that area and the niche so that it blends in with the cemetery. I did look at the one you're talking about right now, even to the point where, as an oil painter artist, I was thinking, how could I go in there and paint the boxes so they look like rocks? But I would like to leave the third option about moving it across the street open until we know more from zoning. I'm surprised that James said that the pastor approved this as his plan, because he has not shared that with me. And so I just don't think we're ready to go forward to the HALRB.
Well, Larry, check your email, because yes, Tier did confirm.
I have no email.
He did, but that's our internal business. Pastor can, and he can be here if necessary.
We can always discuss it. I mean, if there's a desire to discuss it, but I have no.
Sure. Then I think what I would recommend then, James, is that we'll amend your current application to just have this iteration so that there's less confusion about what options are available. And if somebody pulls it off the consent agenda, I can have some backup slides that show the different iterations and the thought that really went into this, and then have a staff report ready. Should a member of the HALRB decide that they want to pull it off the consent agenda and put it on the discussion agenda in the meeting.
And I'll be happy to help with that backup document.
Okay.
I can create a new backup document that doesn't have the confusion that we inadvertently got into.
No, there was a lot of work.
I know. Well, so I catch the succinct part, and I agree with that strategy. Try and keep it simplified if it needs to be expanded, if the conversation needs to be open.
So we will put it on consent, with that being our game plan. And I will follow up tomorrow with an email to just reiterate how we're going to move forward. Thanks.
And I'll work on getting this to you as quickly as I can.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you, Larry, for joining. I hope that you feel better as well.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Yes,
Appreciate
thank you. Final item. Thank you for waiting.
Oh, no worries.
Had a pretty robust agenda for today. Like you all likely remember Lauren from past meetings. She's here to represent the Barcroft Apartments. I'm happy to let some of her go over screen sharing, or I'm happy to go through and see the topics.
Yeah, do you have a staff presentation that you want to go to before ours? If not, we have just some slides that we'd like to go through to kind of show what the scope of this one is. Does
Yeah,
that sound
Go ahead, Lauren.
Yeah, just go ahead.
Perfect,
This
I
is
know.
all you. You waited so patiently.
Yeah.
All good, and we have members of our team online too, so it's not just me. I know we have skeleton crew in person tonight, but Greg or Alice, you can go ahead and share your screen with the PowerPoint. I'll just for the record reintroduce myself, Martin Riley with Walsh Colucci. We represent Gyre Lynch Real Estate Partner applicant here. And we're happy to bring forth for you tonight the third renovation project at Barcroft. So we're moving along, we're rehabilitating some of these units. And it's not understated to, we're improving the current residents' experience by improving the interior and the exterior of these units. So this is our third one. We had the first phase in July, second phase just got approved last month in December. And here we are in the third. And we've got members of our design team and our applicant team online tonight as well for questions. We have Greg Ward and Alice Higman with Gyre Lynch. We've got Chelsea Thomas and Martin Oliver with Mosley Architects. And we've got Jeff Krups with BICA. And I think Sarah Vonish with Trace Reeds or Laura might be online as well. Sarah's there. Great. So just to orient you to where we are in Barcroft, I know we're all at this point very familiar with everything and how we got here. So we'll just get through some of these slides to show you where we are and what the scope is. So those areas shaded in gray there, those are the first two phases that you all considered this past year. And then the area there that's outlined in red is the buildings that are under this phase 3 renovation, buildings 12 through 16. So 5 buildings there that kind of span across South Thomas Street. So the first 4 are 12. If you could run your mouse over the buildings, there's a 12, 13, 14, 15, and then across the street is 16, which looks like it's 2 buildings, but it's really just one interconnected building. That's kind of 2 L's meeting together. And I think you're all familiar with this diagram that kind of color codes the building in order of the section that they were built. This is red, which means it's section 1. All these buildings were part of the first phase of Barcroft that was constructed in the early 1940s. So they have a little bit more detailing to these entrances, as you'll see when we go through the photos. Next slide. Here's an aerial image of where we are in Barcroft, kind of right in the middle there. Columbia Pike is to your left. That tail of Barcroft is down there to your right. And then on the right side, you can see zoomed in these 5 buildings. Next slide. Then here we have some photos of the buildings. This is building 12 right there along Thomas Street. As I mentioned, you can see how ornate some of the detailing is here on these front entrances. Next slide. Building 13 right behind it, a little more interior to Barcroft. And as we've seen with the last phase, we have some buildings here where the brick has been painted and some where we've got the original red brick. So that continues throughout in this phase. Next slide. Building 14, which is kind of a mirror of the previous building you just saw, similar circumstances, interior courtyards, different detailing on those entrances. Next slide. 15, kind of coming back up in that square along South Thomas Street. A little smaller building footprint. Next slide. And here's building 16. And I'll pause for a second to note picture 2 on the top right there. With this scope of renovations, like last time, we'll be converting 2 units to accessible units by creating new entries. So I'll point out on that top right image there, the 2 new unit entries are going to be on the side elevations of the building where they're meeting at that corner. So if you could run your mouse kind of over the center of that on the left there, that blind window is going to come down to create the new entrance. And then on the red brick building, we'll have to create a whole new opening for that door And another thing that you'll note, because of the grade change across here, the bottom floor of these buildings is a basement. And then the unit is on the second floor, so we are gonna have to ramp up to meet that floor elevation.
One question. Previous slide, you're putting handicap units in here. There were some series of steps. The sidewalk, can we eliminate those?
Did you, on the building
Yeah.
15 slide?
Previous, can you flip
You
previous
go back to 15.
one more?
Maybe go back one more.
Oh, is it, I think building 13? Maybe what you're talking
Yeah,
about?
there you go.
Those steps? Oh, okay.
That's right.
I think these run, where is this? This is right in the middle in between buildings 13 and 14. Here we won't have accessible unit entrances, and I think these steps, they do not go to a parking lot. I don't think we'd have to pull up the site plan. I think that's an interior connection. And there's a lot of other paths to get around. So we haven't looked at modifying sidewalks or steps in areas where we are not doing site improvements. We can go through and you'll see in a second the site plan sketch of where the ramping will go here. So if we could go forward to the front of building 16 again. Yeah, there you go. So the front second image there, that's where those corners meet, where you'll see in a second, Mosley Architects will go over their design for those 2 unit entrances. We go to the next slide, you'll see the back of building 16, and the grade drops quite a bit. Over there, you can kind of see that in images 6 and 7. And in 7, that asphalt there, that's the drive aisle that comes around the back of the building. Next slide. Summary of renovations. I won't go through all of these in detail. They're very similar in scope. So what you've seen in the past 2 applications, the exterior renovations, so we'll be cleaning the brick, replacing some of those light fixtures. We're upgrading heating and air systems again, so infilling some of those penetrations on the front facades, creating some new ones on the back to accommodate venting. We will be creating new openings for those 2 accessible unit entrances. We'll also be making some site improvements and creating 2 new amenity areas for the residents. And then again, and I know we sound like a broken record with the Virginia housing requirements. So the canopies, we're proposing the canopies and the cladding of wood trim. Still, unfortunately, we haven't heard back from them on our first application and the waiver request for those 2 items. And they've been going through some internal revisions to their procedures and their comments. So we're still waiting on a formal response, but just to update you guys. And I know we're eager to find out. And once we do, Michael and Cynthia and her team will be, and you guys will all be among the first to know. So, I mean, hopefully that'll come soon and we'll have an update for you at upcoming meetings. But we'll be requesting the same thing here, request the cladding and the canopies with the intent to submit a waiver for that. We won't be submitting a waiver for the fiberglass door for the new entrances or the canopy on the accessible entrances, just like we did last time. Next slide. Here's kind of a rendered site plan focusing on building 16 and that amenity space in between buildings 12 and 15. On the other side of South Thomas Street, we'll be creating a new space there. Programming, we're still working on what that will be. And then, plan north of South Thomas Street, we'll be updating, restriping that parking lot to make it a little more efficient and to provide accessible parking spaces. And then you'll see that there's a pathway that will come near the new accessible spaces that will lead directly to the ramp up to those 2 units. So it'll be 1 ramp up to that area to provide access to the new accessible unit entrances. You go to the next slide. And I'm gonna hand it over now to Mosley Architects to kind of walk you through the design of those new entrances, and what they've got in store for those elevations.
Thank you very much. My name's Tom Liebel. I'm the managing principal with Mosley Architects, working on this project here. And as a bit of a background, we looked at all the different buildings, trying to minimize the impact of new accessible entrances on the historic presentation of these buildings. And most of the buildings were ruled out because we couldn't get an accessible path to the buildings. Obviously, some of the backside of the buildings look like you not have a nice level entrance in. The problem is you can't park and get a path to there. So in the end, we ended up with a very limited series of options, and actually showed a couple options, and from some initial feedback, ended up with this little corner location here, which while it fronts the front of the building, is on the side. There are definitely secondary elevations, and in kind of a 2-for-1 approach, have one common ramp that touches the two end pieces of the buildings where you have these kind of gable ends to allow us to create two accessible entrances. As you've seen, I'm sure, in other prior applications too. The problem is, even if you could get to the existing entrance, the existing entries, which are already elevated a couple steps, that's a mid-level landing. You have to go up or down roughly 4 feet. So you simply can't get to where you're trying to get to. So an exterior approach is really the only valid one. So as you can sort of see, it's on the side in the corner of the building, so it's relatively unobtrusive. Looking at the detailing, if you go to the next slide, potentially, there's the 90 degrees from there, the other side view there with the ramp coming up. What we've proposed is a palette that's consistent with the balance of the space there, using incorporating the brick to match the existing there, and a simple railing that is a 2-pipe pipe rail, which matches all the other extant guardrails and handrails on the site. So it's a nice, clean, simple design, painted black, looking like everything else is there. And beyond that, as also noted, we are showing a canopy that is required by Virginia Housing only over the accessible entrances, not over the existing entrances for the remainder of the spaces there. If you go to the next slide, please. There's a kind of detailed model of the corner there, kind of ramping up, kind of a very modest insertion to get us to the 2 door entries there. And as a final slide, we're on to the treatments of that. So that's really quite simple. It's a very modest insertion to create just a couple of accessible units.
Thanks, Tom. And we're happy to discuss that a little further. I think that'll be the focus of the discussion tonight. We'll just roll through these next slides to call out. We'll be replacing some of the exterior lighting fixtures with ones to match existing. Next slide. Window replacements. We have the same condition here where we have some metal basement windows that we need to replace. We'll be replacing those with vinyl to match the existing already replaced windows near these basement areas.
The canopy over the accessible entries, is that standing seam or?
Could we go back to the perspective? And then Tom, do you want to take that? The question is that canvas or metal?
We were looking at metal on that as a lower maintenance issue on that. We certainly could have a conversation around what you'd like to see there, but the initial intention was to have it out of metal.
That's fine. It's just, and it says new canvas awning.
Oh, okay. I think we had updated our plans when we were filing and we were creating this package. So I think that's a note that we can fix on the next submission. We can take that note. So you're looking at metal, and then we fast forward, drag through. We cover the light fixtures, window placements. Yep, the exterior doors. Like last time, we're proposing fiberglass doors per Virginia housing requirements, but we're proposing a door type that's consistent with the surrounding doors on these buildings, similar color, etc. Next slide. And then we went over the trim and the canopies for Virginia housing, so requesting that waiver. Next slide. Canopies, here's just like a little more detail on the canopies there. We can go over that a little bit more. Next slide. And then summary of our applications. We've submitted our form-based code use permit application right before the holidays. So staff is reviewing that. We're going through this process in concert with that. We hope to be before the county board in April. So we'll be back before you all HLRB this month, and then maybe next month, or we might skip a month depending on the feedback and everyone's schedules. But we have the same requests as last time in terms of the modifications of the conservation area standards that we need. And that's it for our presentation. We're happy to answer some questions. I know it's late, so we'll try to be quick about it. Cynthia?
Thank you, Lauren and team. That was really, really thorough. Just I had one clarifying question. Are you creating 2 accessible units or 4 total?
Just on this
2?
one, it will just be 2.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank
Like
you.
Tom said, we tried to look at other places, but as you know, like a lot of things have to align for us to be able to do it. So on here, we could only find 2.
Okay, just wanted to confirm. Thank you.
Yep. Questions, comments?
And you're still working on the programming as for that amenity space or in that's.
Yeah, Jeff, can you confirm? We haven't identified the programming for those spaces yet. I think we were considering maybe like patio, outdoor grilling space, maybe.
Yeah, at this point, I think that's an adequate explanation of what we're considering there. Sort of minor intervention to allow for a sort of a central space for people to come and hang out. And so that's, I think your description is accurate at this point.
And that's one thing we're trying to look at with each of these renovations is, previously there's not really a area where people could gather and sit and eat and that kind of thing. So with each one, we're trying to find kind of like the flattest areas that are in these interior courtyards to use to have some programming for the residents in these buildings.
And will any trees be taken down and sort of as part of this renovation or?
Yes.
The space, I guess.
So with this one, I'm happy, and Jeff is happy to preliminary report. No trees should be coming down. Don't hold us to it. We're still finalizing all of the site work that needs to be done with stormwater and utility improvements. But as it stands right now, our plan is that we will not be taking down any trees.
What's the route? Accessible parking spaces to accessible units.
Okay. Yeah, and I think you can sort of see in shadow on the left where the 2 accessible spaces will be. They'll go from there to that sidewalk. They'll have to kind of go right and then left and then up and over. So we tried to get as direct a path as we could without modifying the sidewalks.
So where's the steps? So
The steps that you saw are below the gathering space in between buildings 12 and 15. I think in one of those pathways, either on the left or the right.
so that
I think they're off the screen, but between 13 and 14 down here.
Oh, sorry, 13.
So
Yeah.
I guess that area should be made accessible, at least from the accessible units, so that you're gonna provide curb cuts and whatever, so someone that's in an accessible unit can get to your common space.
We have, I think the idea is that the new accessible units on building 16 will utilize the gathering space where the mouse is right now. So that will be, and they'll be comparable, right, Jeff, the 2 amenity.
That's correct. Yeah.
They'll provide similar features, and that way it's easier to get to, and no one has to cross the street to get down to the other space. So they'll utilize the one in their building or just outside of their building.
So I thought you said the communal gathering spot was.
There'll be two. I'm sorry, yeah, so there's one, I think that you're looking at in between buildings 12 and 15 is one of the spaces. And the second one, it might be a little hard to read, we can fix that, where it says gathering space right there in that interior courtyard. So that square, we're still working on what the programming will be, but it'll be a comparable space to the one below. And that way it's easily accessible from those two new type A units and from the parking lot.
And for all the residents of building 16, so you don't have to cross Thomas
Right.
Street. I mean, that's sort of, it's a decent sized project, and having multiple gathering spaces, I think is perfectly appropriate for a project of this size.
Yep. I think the one that you were looking at in between buildings 12 and 15, there are a couple different ways to get there from the bottom of the site. There to the screen left off of the image is where the parking is for these buildings. So they would most likely access that space coming from the parking and then those pathways instead of from south.
Was there any thought into adding a window beside, I guess, the entrance to the ADA unit? That's, I guess, sort of in building 16, that's sort of tucked in. Is the one
Good enough perspective.
Yeah.
Greg. Yeah. Maybe.
I know the ADAs have a light touch, but was there any thought about making it more like a little more, I don't know, entrance-y?
We actually studied, there are other buildings on site that have a central door with two flanking windows, and that was kind of our first approach, was to look at that. And it looked just a little more, it looked a little aggressive for what we're trying to do. So we went for a more minimal approach on that, but we did study that. And the one thing to note too is that you are, if you look at that perspective there, on the right-hand door coming in, you're walking into kind of the midpoint of the living space. You are getting natural daylight coming in from the right-hand side there. So there's, if you've been in these units, they actually have a fair amount of natural daylight coming through them. So while the wall, the gable end looks blank, and it is, you do still have a fair amount of daylight coursing in through the windows on the north and south sides.
But you don't have a canopy over the door?
It's hard to tell. It's really dark. We do have one there. You can see an elevation, I think, in a slide before this one.
Yeah. The cursor's on it. It's very faint if you look at it.
Yeah.
But it's there.
Okay.
So you have a light fixture in the
Okay.
next to the new door. Any thoughts or comments on materials of the canopies or the railings or ramps or anything like that?
I like the simplicity of the railing. I mean, I think that's a good touch. And I saw in your package that it doesn't match the other railings that are around the site there. I think that's a good language for it, honestly.
That pipe railing.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tom and his team did a good job at trying to minimize the visual effect of the ramp, and the railing, kind of have it blended with the existing buildings.
Cynthia?
Just another question about the canopies. I know you're still waiting to hear from Virginia Housing, but the two that you're proposing here over the accessible units, are they identical to what you've proposed in the other two renovation sections, or are these different in any way?
No, these are different, and I think maybe on one of our later slides, we have a section of it. I think on slide 19, Greg, if you could zoom in to the section, this is a different canopy type than the one you all have seen before.
Is there a specific reason for that? Because I'm just trying to anticipate what the full commission might ask you. Because we've been talking about some of these same elements, for the past few months. So just my advice would be just to be prepared to explain why these look different and what your thought process was in case it comes up.
Okay, great. And,
Okay.
and I'll let Tom chime in here, but I think we had this broader discussion last time on the canopies and the options. And I think where we landed was each section is different. So we're not going to intentionally try and coordinate canopies across all of the renovations. So we're going to take a fresh look at each one as to like what makes sense with that section. And I think, Tom, if you want to provide any other color on this canopy design and type for these.
I mean, part of it is you're absolutely right. You know, each phase of the project is slightly distinct. All the buildings are not identical. So having a slight variation in treatment it seems to make sense. And with that, we were just going for a very minimal and reversible approach to this. We do think it's appropriate to have canopies here. Residents who are kind of walking into the other primary entrances have vestibules to get in and take their umbrella down, things like that. If we're looking at disabled residents who will be fumbling for keys, potentially crutches or wheelchair, in a wheelchair, it's nice to have some protection for them. And once again, from a Virginia housing perspective, all entrances are supposed to have canopies, and we've asked for a variance because of the historic nature of this to not put canopies where it's clearly not appropriate over the more detailed door surrounds on the existing entrances. But here, it seems to be appropriate and a nice concession to Virginia housing to provide them where they're not intrusive and don't look out of place.
That was a great response. Remember that for 2 weeks from tonight, in case it comes up. Sound good?
Any other thoughts, questions, comments? Okay, well, it's an informational item, and so there's no, it's gonna be on the agenda.
Yeah.
Discussed.
So we'll discuss on the 17th. I don't think we'll change anything in our package. We'll probably just make that correction on the material and send it back.
You can
Eagle eye.
You can send it to me or Lauren, and I'll make sure that it's put on.
All right, perfect.
Thank
you all.
so much.
Have a good
Thank you all.
night.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful evening.
Last
Thank you.
but not
Good night.
Thanks. We'll do this again soon.
Yes.
Take care.
You too.
Props to you guys for us all coming in.